Coming out of this final corner then, coming up to the start finish line, I am going to do a qualifying lap guide, and I'm going to try and pronounce all of the corner names as well, so apologies in advance, I am going to butcher all of the names. So coming up to turn 1 and braking just before the 100-meter board on the left, you're braking just as the grass begins, and then coming in a bit of a diagonal entry then into turn 1. I find these two corners here to be really tricky, so especially coming up turn 2 here, find it really difficult to get the power down, and it's really bumpy. First gear in this Supra is lethal at the best of times, never mind going over those bumps. Turn 3 then, braking just after the grass begins on the right, taking a late apex and then braking just as the curb ends on the left for turn 4, using all of the track on exit here, using all of that green tarmac as we then make our way then down to the Dunlop car, using a patch of tarmac, a patch of grass on the left as your braking point for the Dunlop car. Turning this corner into a little bit of a V shape, and you want to get on the power really early out there, a lot earlier than you think. Schumacher S's, you can take this flat out in the Supra if you get it just right, but we did miss our apex through there somewhat, so you just had to lift off slightly on turn into the corner. Coming into the Michelin curve then, you're braking just as before the green tarmac begins, and then you've got the Vorsteiner curve here. Hate this corner, I really hate it. There's no reference points whatsoever. It's so difficult, that corner. It's so easy to miss your apex or brake too early or whatnot. Now coming through the kink to the right up to the alternative chicane, much better than the chicane that Formula 1 use in my opinion. I much prefer this. So braking at the 50-meter board on the right and then using all of the curb and then some more. Then coming into the cut through, braking, there's a bit of an orange barrier on the left. You want to be braking there for the cut through, and then turn 1 of the Nordschleife, braking just after the pit wall ends on the right hand side, coming out the corner then getting the power down using these exit curbs, and then coming into the first part of Hatzenbach. You can just about take this flat out in the Supra if you get it just right before you then come down into this tight left right. So braking into a bit of grass on the right hand side, there's a cut change in the colour of the grass which you can use as a reference point. And now coming flat out through this section, a little bit of a dab of the brakes, getting all gobbling up the curbs through this section. You want to get greedy through there, and then using a little bit of the curb then through the right hander here, or Hockenheim, I think it's how you say it. Coming out of there now, we're on a good lap so far as we make our way up to the Flugplatz. You can go flat out over the Flugplatz, or the car does take off ever so slightly. There we go, a little bit of a wheelie, and then a little bit of a lift as you go into Flugplatz itself. First curb, you want to be using that. Second curb, you don't. So we took Flugplatz reasonably well there as we now come through Kottenborn and into the Schwedenkreuz. So the Schwedenkreuz, it is flat out in this car, just about. If you turn in just at the right time, it is flat out, but it's a blind entry there, so very difficult. Braking for Arenberg then, just as the curb ends on the left hand side, so braking just after the end of the curb. You can get on the power quite early out of Arenberg, earlier than you think, and you can use the exit curb too. It's quite a deceiving corner as we now make our way through Fruxfura and up to Adner first. So through Fuchsruhe, you want to be taking it to a little bit of a dab of the brakes into this left hand here, so a little bit dab of the brakes, using the curb on the entry as you then slam on the brakes for Adner first, using the zebra crossing as a reference then, and cutting a lot of the first part, and you want to be using the curb through the second part too. You can get greedy through Adner first. Now making our way down to Metzgersfeld, you want to be using, there's a white barrier on the right hand side that you'll see in a second, so there it is, using the end of that white barrier as a reference, so just lifting up before you turn in then, before you then slam on the brakes for the tight left-hander, which I kind of braked a little bit too early for there. Coming into Kallenhard, braking just as a sign on the left-hand side, you can use it as a reference, braking just after that. Use the exit curb out of Kallenhard, and then coming into Miss Hit Miss then, you can take the first section flat out in this car, but a little dab of the brakes then for Miss Hit Miss itself, using the concrete on the left-hand side, the end of the concrete as a reference. Coming down now into the hairpin, there's white barriers on the right-hand side which you can use as a reference, and then it's a double apex through that hairpin section. Coming out of there now, we are now coming, I think that's called Versenfein, and now we're coming up to Exmuller. So going over the bridge then, using the end of the curb for that corner as your reference to where to brake for, and then into this really tricky corner where you've got that Polish sign on the left, that Polish flag. Yeah, it's really difficult as you go over the crest there. Vicious curve as well. That's a very scary corner. Coming now into the Lauda kink, so this is where Niki Lauda had his crash many years ago. Now braking, there's a Yokohama board on the right hand side which you can use as a reference into this tight right-hander of Bergwerk. Yeah, late apex through Bergwerk. I quite enjoy that circuit, that corner, sorry, should I say. When you get it right, it is really quite a thrilling corner. Then coming up the hill, then up through these long left-handers, the whole section is flat out, and yeah, just about making it into 6th gear, but in some occasions, in some cars, you will stay in 5th gear up this whole uphill section into, I think this is called Keshel Chen. Such a scary corner, slight lift on turning, just about managed to get that right. We actually nailed that corner there. I'm not very happy with that, using the concrete as well before you turn in and on exit as curbs. Now coming onto the brakes now for, I think this is called Klostertal or something. Yeah, I'm kind of a bit loftus where I am right now, but braking just as the curb starts on the left of there, and now coming down into the carousel itself. We've got, unfortunately, we have got traffic in front. We've got Sheikh Shabazz, who we've unfortunately caught up, so we are flashing our lights now, trying to get him to, well, basically move out of our way, but be aware that we are behind. Coming out of the carousel now and coming up to her axe, I believe this is called. Tricky section this, the curbs, you want to be cutting that bit there. We missed our apex through here, really difficult through that right-hander as the car goes light. If we do give Sheikh a bit of a punt there by accident, we're on a fast lap at the end of the day. We're trying to go as fast as we can, and Sheikh did somewhat get into our way, going for head for her, then getting really greedy with the curbs through that section as you then brake for this right-hander just as the curb ends on the left-hand side. You can this Yokohama sign on the right as a braking reference for this double left-hander before you enter YouTube corner itself, which I believe is called Brunschen. So this is Brunschen 1 and Brunschen 2. Brunschen 2, YouTube corner itself, you're braking just as the curb ends on the left-hand side. Coming out of Brunschen now into the ice curve, late apex through here, and be really careful on exit not to get too greedy with the grass and not to get spat off to the left. Coming down now over the jump into what I believe is called the Flanksgarten, I believe this is called. You want to use the first curb, you want to get close to that, but not the second one. So little break into there. First apex you want to use, second one you don't want to. Coming out over the crest into, I think it's called the Sprunghugel and Flanksgarten 2. Just want to straighten this out as best as possible, really. Just line of least resistance, like Fuchsrow was back earlier on the lap. Using the trees on the left end as a braking reference for this right-hander, and then into the left-hander is concrete on the right, which you can use as a reference. Coming into the mini carousel, there's a marking on the curves, which you can use as a reference then to brake for the mini carousel, which is an extremely irritating corner. Into Galgenkampf then, don't want to be touching the first part, don't want to be touching the curbs at all through there, to be honest. It's really bumpy for that section. If you get too close to the curb, it's really bumpy, sends you off wide, no good. Coming now out of the, whatever it's called, the Galgenkampf onto the Duttinghoe itself, we are purple by more than 2 seconds. So John Hardy, Apex Magnet, he's already finished his lap. He's done an 8-minute 5.3, and we are more than 2 seconds up on him now as we enter the Duttinghoe. Coming up to the bridge now, so we've just gone under the gantry, back at the Audi gantry thing. Coming up to the bridge now, coming in to Antonusbusch, and then coming bombing down into Tiergarten. Such a scary section of circuit here. You are at absolute top speed as you come into Tiergarten. Braking, there's a white line on the circuit, you can use that as a braking point. Getting greedy then with the curbing through the Tiergarten itself and through the Hunrain, as that final section is called, and onto the start finish line itself. What is our lap time going to be? It's going to be an 8 minutes 3.1.